Hello, this is Professor BRB, and this will be the first in a two-video series on how to create a multi-state object with a map, where you click on different pins and information about that destination comes up. Now, those of you who've made multi-state objects before, it's customary, more frequently, that the states are all stacked on top of each other like a slideshow, but you can do a lot of more creative things with a multi-state object. Now, this first video will be assembling the assets. And that is actually a big part of every job. I'll kind of show you what I mean here. This is a created multi-state object, and I'm going to release all states to objects, so you'll kind of see what we have. And you'll see that I have made these cards, and I've created these little map pins all inside InDesign. And I'll show you how to do that, and if you already know how to do that, you can just skip ahead to the next video and I'll show you how to actually put the multi-state object together. It's really the bigger part of the job is getting all the assets together. So let's take a look at what I assembled in order to be able to start on this project. And I had some pictures of various places in London that I took last time I was there. I have a copy of the London Underground logo. I just am going to use 4 of the pictures. Of course, you always assemble more than you're going to use. And then I have this little London Transport logo here that I'm going to use for the map pins. And a big map of London in SVG, which is scalable vector graphics. So I know that that's going to be expandable without losing any quality. And I found those things searching around on the internet, and I took the pictures myself. So let's go back to InDesign and get started actually making this. So over here on the pasteboard, I've pulled some guides out to show me while I'm drawing my rectangle the size it's going to be. And I just go to my rectangle tool here. And this is very simple. I just drag out a rectangle. And we can go to our swatches to lighten up that color a little bit. This is a little point that you don't really want to use transparency when what you really need is to lighten up. This is a mistake a lot of people make, is they apply transparency. And I wouldn't want to use transparency here because I don't want the map to show through this. So I make sure I do it in my swatches panel, and I pull it down to a point I like it. Then to get the rounded corners is I go to Object, Corner Options, and I have to make sure I've got Preview checked, and I have to break this little chain here so that I can have different options on different corners. They don't all have to be the same. I'm going to kick that up a bit. That looks about right. And then I want to do it just on this one. So I'm just doing 2 of the corners. And I did 29 there, so I probably should do the same thing here. And there we go. So that makes a nice little different look to the card. I think it's kind of nicer. And I'm going to round the corners of the picture box too, so that's good. Of course, once I have one, it's very easy to just copy and paste it and make more. So now I want to pull my 4 pictures in. And what I do there is I simply go to File, Place, and I navigate to find my images. I have my 4 images here. I've named them. I've named the images so that I know what they are, and that comes in a little handy later when we make the MSO. I just click Open. I select all 4 of them. I click Open. And now you see I've got a cursor with 4 on it. And in order to get them all to come in together, I drag it with my mouse button down, and I'm going to hit my up arrow button on my keyboard once and my right arrow button on my keyboard once. And you see kind of what that did for me? Now, if I want to move this to sort of calculate the size here, I can I'm holding down my space bar, and I can see that's a little too big. So I'm going to try and approximate the size I got before. That looks about right. So space bar is still being held down. That's why I can move it around before I release my mouse button. So now I let go of the space bar and I let go of my mouse button. There'll be a little bit of a pause, and my 4 pictures come in. If I wanted to, I could work on my fitting here. I could go fill frame proportionally. I can work with the fitting however I want. That's under object fitting. And now I want to round the corners, and I do it the same way I did it before. Corner options. In this case, I want the chain to be intact because I want all 4 corners to be the same. So I go to rounded, still got it on preview, and you see now because the little chain is there that if I do one, they all follow the same. And in this case, that's what I want. And so I click OK. So let's see what we've got here. We're almost there. So I want 4 of these little cards. I'm going to ungroup. That's one of my old cards, and I'm going to ungroup it so I can just use the always kind of tricky creating a job you've already created, but I think you'll kind of see why I did it this way. So here's this. I'm going to copy it, edit, copy, and then edit, paste, edit, paste, edit, paste. There's other ways to do that, but that's just the way I chose to do it right now. So now I have my 4 cards. They're all identical because I copied and pasted them. And for each one of them, I will put in a picture. Looks like I made the pictures a little small, doesn't it? That's okay. And I have my little text frame. Of course, I didn't talk about the text earlier, but getting the text is always a big part of every job. And, oops, look, my text frame disappeared. So I have to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Well, that looks pretty good. So now what I do is I want to make sure these are aligned perfectly, horizontally aligned. So with my selection tool, I select them all, and I go to Window, Object and Layout, Align, and then I can align center, and that aligns them perfectly. So that looks good. And if I wanted to, I could make the picture a little bigger, but I think you guys kind of get the idea here. And now I want all 3 of these to move together. I don't want them to get, like right now, if I just take one and I try and move one, I'm likely to lose it. So I'm going to select it, and then I just choose Object Group. And so now one click gets them all, and I can't lose those anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and just repeat that process. Probably try and be a little more exact to make sure that I get my picture and my text in exactly the same position. But I think you can kind of see how I created my cards here. And let me get rid of that. I still got my original cards. And then you might want to know how I created this little map pin. And I didn't do it. You could do it in Adobe Illustrator and import it, but I didn't really feel that was necessary because it's easy enough to do in InDesign. If you know Adobe Illustrator, you might be more comfortable doing it that way. But I think you can do it in InDesign, and then you don't even have to have a linked file. So I just went with the ellipse frame tool there, which hides normally just over with the frame tools. And I'm going to kind of just eyeball this, get it looking okay. I want to make it a white fill, which even though we are working for interactive, because InDesign has its history as a print application, white is still called paper, even though we know we're working for interactive and it's not paper at all. But that's just InDesign for you. And now, let's see, find a nice color of blue here. I think I picked this blue earlier for the stroke. And I can control this, I can control the stroke up here. Maybe 2 points looks about right. And for those of you who know Illustrator, you'll be very familiar with the tools that live under the pen tool. And InDesign has its own pen tool. And you can go down to the bottom under the pen tool suite and get the Convert Direction Point tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this bottom point here, just a regular vector point like Illustrator or any vector thing, and that makes it into a corner point. So now it's just a matter, I took my white arrow tool, my direct selection tool, and you just can kind of use your Illustrator drawing chops here if you have them. If not, you can probably fake it. And you can use the handles here to get it exactly the shape that you want it. And, you know, there's different ways to do this, and some people might come up with a better way, but this is just how I did it. And I can squeeze that in a little bit. And the nice thing about doing it in InDesign is that you don't have to have a link. Now I just need to pull this little guy in. So I'll go back to my ellipse frame tool here. Pull it in here. Get it kind of the way I want it. I can do my frame fitting options before if I want. And it's, I can hit auto fit and fill frame proportionately. That looks pretty good to me, so that's all right. And I do File Place or Command D. I've got to go back and find my little. One really important thing about working with InDesign, there's my little logo. Super important is that you realize that every InDesign project is a folder. It's not just your InDesign file. It's a folder with all of the assets, and you have to keep them all together because if any of these links get broken, you're in a world of hurt. So that looks good. I'm just going to go to the Align tools and make absolutely sure that they're aligned perfectly. Align. You just make sure that this is set align to selection and then align them. Yeah, it looks like they were pretty good. And then I just go to Object Group. Now one click, oh wait, oh, hold on, I didn't have them both selected. My bad, I made a mistake there. Let me make sure I have them both selected and then I go Object Group. First I'll ungroup it, do it again. Okay, so now, there you go, now they're together. So that worked out pretty well. So now I have my assets made. And the other things that I did to prepare this was obviously I created an InDesign page and I put the map in there. You probably want to set up your document with some layers. And everybody kind of has their own way of doing this, but I will tell you that when I speak to people in industry and I ask, gee whiz, what can I tell my students to make them better in the workplace? And they always say, tell them to use layers. Please tell them to use layers. So you might want to create some layers and name them something that will make sense because somebody else may someday be putting their hands on your file and you want it to be fairly easy for them. So I'm going to now close this video out, and the next video we will put the multi-state object together. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.